So shopping for rugs is challenging. It can be overwhelming. And you don't really know what you're getting, the quality, they're expensive, so you want to make the right decision. Well, I'm here to tell you about Revival Rugs. Revival was created to disrupt the rug industry, which is filled with notoriously overpriced pieces or low quality rugs that won't last. So, Revival rugs are works of art. They're beautiful. They curate one of a kind collections, new rugs, vintage rugs, without the markup. You go on the website, they show the rugs in pictures in rooms. You can get a really good idea of what these rugs will look like. My son just got the Halo rug, an 8x10, an incredibly reasonably priced rug for a guy that just bought his first house, with an eye on evolving customer needs and dedication to blending tradition with innovation. Revival Rugs continue to weave quality, style, and purpose into every piece. Visit revivalrugs.com/fluster and use the code FLUSTER20 for 20% off your first order. Once again, that's revivalrugs.com/fluster and use code FLUSTER20. One more time, that's revivalrugs.com/FLUSTER with the code FLUSTER20 to save 20% off. In order for it to be OCD, there has to be a disturbing thought that makes you very uncomfortable, and then a compulsion or a ritual that you do in order to relieve the stress of the obsessive thought.
Welcome to Season 7 of Flusterclux with Lynn Lyons, where we'll talk about managing anxiety and all the other emotions too. We tackle the serious stuff without being too serious. I'm your co-host, Robin. I'm Lynn's sister-in-law, and I'm here to ask your questions.
And I'm Lynn Lyons. I'm an anxiety expert, speaker, mom, and author. I've been a therapist for 35 years. Parenting can be a flusterclux, and I'm here to help you find your way. I'll tell you what to do and what to say. Hey, Ed.
Hey, Lynn. How you doing today?
Pretty good. It's 75. Do you know what I realized today? I was working this morning, and so I had like real clothes on, and then I was going to go for a walk. So I went upstairs to get my shorts, and I couldn't remember where I keep my shorts because it's been 7 months. Like literally, I was like, where are my shorts? And then I realized, oh, they're in the short drawer, but I haven't put on shorts since like October, and now it's almost May. Yeah, so I've got my shorts on.
Your cabana wear.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So you had a quick thing you wanted to discuss before we got into a excellent listener question that we're going to address.
Yeah. So it come across this a lot, and somebody asked me a question recently that brought it to mind. It's not a big enough issue to do a whole episode. That's why we're going to combine it. But it's really just a little bit of, I guess, a warning or sort of a little inside information for parents to just remember that anxious kids are notoriously bad reporters about what happened. Because remember, they think catastrophically. So very often a kid will get off the school bus or come home from a birthday party. And if they're anxious, particularly if, they're a little shy or they're have a hard time moving into things, and they generally tell a story that is very, sometimes heartbreaking or very alarming or catastrophic to a parent. So the parent will say, like, how was your day? And they'll be like, it was terrible. My whole day was awful and everybody was mean to me. Or they'll say, did you eat with anybody at lunch? No, nobody would sit with me. Or my teacher yelled at me. Or the bus driver told me that I couldn't sit in that chair. And they're very adamant when they tell these stories. And you have to put it through their little anxiety translator, their little catastrophic translator, their little global translator. Remember, global languages, those big words like nobody, always, everybody, because they're trying to tell you they were in distress. They're trying to tell you that they didn't feel good. But sometimes the story gets a little catastrophic, and it's very often not so accurate. What we don't want to do in those situations is, of course, we're not going to say like, oh, well, that's not true, but don't go flying into the school or to the other parent or whoever the other adults may be with sort of your mama or papa bear pants on, because it really is often probably much more likely that your child felt left out, or maybe your child was left out. But it really can come across in the reporting by an anxious child is that like everybody was conspiring against them to keep them from doing something. And that's often not entirely the case.
And their anxiety is rooting on and cheering for this behavior because anxiety, as you've stated so often, loves to elevate everything to a catastrophe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just the fact of it is that an anxious kid very often has an anxious parent. And so that catastrophic report is contagious. And then often if you're a little kid and you're having a tough time and you come home and you say to your mom or your dad, nobody would sit with me at lunch and they were really mean, then that gets a rise out of the parent, which feels good to the kid. They feel like, oh, my mommy or my daddy is listening to me. And so everybody is joining in this big catastrophic reaction. And it can feel good. It can feel satisfying. It can feel like they were heard. And oftentimes little kids also don't have the nuance to come home and say, well, I really wanted to sit at the lunch table with this other group of friends, but my anxiety made it really hard for me to go up and ask. And then I tried to go up and ask, but I didn't say anything. And so they kind of ignored me and I felt really left out. Like they're not going to come up with this nuanced tale of what happened. It's going to be, I wanted to sit at the lunch table. It didn't happen. And I was left out. So just a little word of caution in terms of reacting to those stories in the way that the anxiety catastrophically wants you to react.
You mentioned that if the parent reacts strongly, the child may feel heard.
Mm-hmm.
But wouldn't you say that a calm response, however, would be better suited and more helpful to the child?
Yeah. So say a kid comes home and says, nobody's playing with me at recess and everybody kicked me out of the blah, blah, blah. And then the mom happened to have talked to the teacher that day or happened to talk to another parent. And they said, oh, we saw Amelia was on the playground and she was playing with a few other friends. And I think her feelings got a little hurt, but she did pretty well. So the mom already knows that the story isn't true. So the child comes home, gives their catastrophic tale of rejection. And then if the mom says like, well, that didn't really happen, or maybe you imagined it, or they probably weren't being that mean to you, that really gets them mad and then they'll double down. So a better response in that category of sort of an even, calm response is to say, oh, that sounds really hard. Is there anything that we could figure out so maybe you can be included next time? So you think about those how questions. This is another example of staying away from those why questions. Why did they kick you out? Why were they so mean to you? Why doesn't Theodore let you play? And to say, oh, that sounds really hard. Is there anything I can do to help you? How can we help you be included next time? And that way you're validating that their feelings were hurt. You're validating that they felt sad, but you're not completely buying in to the veracity of their catastrophic tale. It happens all the time. It happens all the time. Yeah.
You've talked in the past about even if a child, say, skins their knee, their reaction to the event is often greatly impacted if the parent then escalates the dramatic nature of the skinned knee.
Yeah.
Do you see a parallel here to that?
Yep. Because if we think, okay, so you have a physical injury, like you've scraped your knee, versus a moral injury, an emotional injury, how the parent reacts to it is really, really powerful. I tell the story all the time about the week that I failed my driver's test by hitting a car in the parking lot and then got cut from the varsity basketball team. And I was really, really sad. And what was really great about what our dad did was he was like, well, you know, and mom too, they weren't like, we are going to go and call the athletic director and we're marching right in there. Dad was like, well, these things happen. And he also said, you're not going to play if you're on varsity. You're going to sit on the bench. And if you're on JV, you're going to play. So I can come and watch you play. I mean, they were like, felt bad for me, of course. It was a very bad week in the 16-year-old life of Lynn Lyons. But they didn't freak out. And I could imagine, and in fact, I knew other parents that when their child got cut from the team or their child didn't get voted captain of the tennis team, that the parents went nuts. And that just gives the kids a model of when something happens that's unexpected or disappointing, or your feelings get hurt, or you're excluded, or you're rejected. Kids are really looking for their parents of how do we handle this uncomfortable situation? What do we do? Do we go to emergency mode or do we go to problem solving mode? And that's a really important differentiation we want to make for kids.
Absolutely. I remember I have a friend who had another friend, and her little daughter would get very upset with her mom and say, like, "You're the worst mommy ever, and I'm going to run away."
Yeah.
And the mom would say, "Well, I'm so sorry to hear that, but you are stuck with me and we're going to live together." And then the little girl would bring that back to mom and say, "Tell me about how we're stuck together."
Oh,
And
yeah.
the calmness of the parent in that moment was very reassuring to the child.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing that happens too is a child says something and then we read a lot into it. Like if you have a little kid that says, "I hate you, you're the worst mommy ever," then it pulls them right off the topic at hand. And then the mom feels like she has to say, like, "Why would you say that? And that's not how I want you to feel about me." And just totally distracts maybe the mom has said like, "I'm sorry, no, you can't have ice cream before dinner. I hate you." And really what the mom has to say is like, "I can see you're mad. You're still not getting ice cream for dinner."
Well, we have a good listener question.
All right.
And I will read it. Hi there. I love your podcast. It has helped me and my family so much. I have debilitating anxiety, and you have helped me realize how important it is to be able to tolerate uncertainty, especially around my children, and of course, focusing much less on the content. Your OCD content especially interests me. My 9-year-old has an autism spectrum disorder diagnosis, which I don't completely agree with. I haven't told her about it because it doesn't seem to affect her day to day in activities or academics. She does, however, exhibit anxious behavior, facial tics, and possibly OCD and ritualistic behaviors, particularly before bedtime. For the past 2 years or so, every night when we tuck her in, she says, "I love you, you're the best mom ever, good night. I love you, you're the best dad ever, good night." And if she is interrupted, or if something doesn't feel right, she repeats it. Also, she repeats it when she gets up to pee or for a drink in the night. At first, we thought this was cute, so we respond with, "I love you, you're the best kid ever, good night." But since it's continued for so long, I am beginning to have concern. I want to know if there's disturbing thoughts she's having, and if there is a compulsion to say these things, or if it's just bedtime routine stuff. Bringing it up to her seems so unnatural because it's a sweet, loving phrase, and I don't want to put it in her head that it's strange or unwanted. How can we talk to her about this?
This is a good question. A few things. One is that if you have a child that has an ASD diagnosis, autism spectrum disorder, that means right away that we're talking about cognitive rigidity. And the mom says she's not sure about the diagnosis, and I get that. The little girl is still pretty young. So I would be curious, although I can't ask, but I'd be curious where the diagnosis came from and why she doubts it. It is always, always, always fine to get a second opinion. If somebody tells you something about your kid that just doesn't sit right or doesn't make sense, or you feel like you need more information, just find an expert and get the information you need. So that's totally fine. It's also not unusual for kids who have ASD to also have tics, for one. And so we see that there's sort of like this little group of disorders: Tourette syndrome, tic disorders, OCD, sometimes autism, that kind of like to hang out together. So we see that. One of the differentiations that's important to make is that a lot of times kids with autism have very ritualized behavior. And depending on where you are in this spectrum of autism spectrum, sometimes it can be pretty debilitating. And other times it's just something that somebody lives with. They do things a certain way. In order for it to be OCD, there has to be a disturbing thought that makes you very uncomfortable, and then a compulsion or a ritual that you do in order to relieve the stress of the obsessive thought. And what we often see with kids on the spectrum is that they have the compulsive behavior, they have the rituals, but it doesn't really bother them. So there's not really the disturbing thought that they're trying to get rid of. And I think that's what kind of this mom is sort of like, is this just kind of this ritualistic things that she does? Or is it in response to some sort of thought that she's having? The reason that this is tricky, or the reason that I'm not sure, is because she doesn't like to be interrupted and she has to do it in a certain way. And if she gets interrupted, she has to start over. The way to address that with her without pathologizing it or getting too deep into it or trying to, figure out is to say, hey, I'm curious about something. You've been saying this thing at night, right? It's kind of a sweet thing that you say. You've been saying it, but it seems to me that you have to say it in a certain way. And what happens if you didn't say it in that certain way? What would happen, do you think? If you get interrupted, sometimes you have to say it again. What does that feel like for you? What's going on? Now, the child might say, I don't know what you're talking about. I just like to say that thing and that's it. Or they might say, I don't know. But they could say, I have to say this thing. And if I don't say it, then fill in the blank, right? Something bad will happen, or I will get in trouble, or mommy will die. And, sometimes these things come out and parents are like, oh my God. Or she might say, it just doesn't feel right if I don't do it. So the issue is that you're looking at is this an ASD kind of ritualized behavior, or is this more of an OCD thing that she has to do it because there's some fear that something bad will happen? And it really is okay for you to just ask her about that in a way that doesn't go over the top. And again, it's like what we were talking about before, Ed. When you have a conversation with her, you don't want to sit her down and have this really earnest look on your face and say, I need to ask you this important question. You can just say, hey, I was curious, or hey, I was wondering about this, and then see if you can feel it out. Either way, if you feel like she's being kind of held hostage by this, if you feel like it's something she has to do, I'd be curious, does she sleep at other people's houses? What happens if mommy or daddy aren't around to tuck her in? Does this require that only mommy and daddy put her to bed tonight? So has it created that kind of bedtime rigidity? That's something that you want to pay attention to. But you really can say to her, I think we should play around with it a little bit. I think maybe we could say different things, or the mom could say, you can say what you want to me at bedtime, and then I'm going to come back and respond and say what I want to say to you. The main question I ask when I'm trying to find out, particularly with younger kids, if we've got some OCD thing going on, is I say, does it feel like there's a part of your brain that's making up a rule that you have to follow? And if it's OCD, either their eyes are going to get big or they're going to sort of look taken aback that I actually can see into their brain. But that's a phrase or that's a question that younger kids can understand. Yeah.
Well, let's take a quick break and we'll be right back.
As a parent, I bet your brain is already at full capacity. You've got school projects, to-do lists, errands to run. Let Skylight Calendar handle it for you. It syncs your entire family schedule onto a sleek digital display so you can focus on the more important things, like remembering whether or not your coffee is in the microwave or upstairs on the bathroom sink. Skylight Calendar was designed to connect the digital and non-digital worlds while bringing families together. The digital display showcases your family's schedule with clarity, color, and brilliance in either a 10 or 15-inch HD touchscreen. It's an all-in-one smart calendar. It syncs with Google Calendar, Apple Calendar, Outlook, and more. With the free Skylight Companion app, you can add or update events, lists, and more on the go. Your happiness is Skylight's happiness. So if in 120 days you are not 100% thrilled with your purchase, you can return it for a full refund. No questions asked. Right now, Skylight is offering our listeners $30 off their 15-inch calendars by going to skylightcal.com/fluster. Go to skylightcal.com/fluster for $30 off your 15-inch calendar. That's skylightcal.com/fluster. What's something that your mom's always wanted to do? Get into painting, write that novel, make that perfect croissant. Whatever it is, this Mother's Day, you can finally help her achieve it with Masterclass. Our parents are our first mentors, but where do they learn? Maybe a John Kabat-Zinn class on meditation. Our parents help us expand our horizons? You want to return the favor? Give your parents the gift of Masterclass. There's nothing like gaining a fresh perspective from experts who've seen it all and have the wisdom to prove it. I've learned from Masterclass, and it's about time that someone you love has the same opportunity. If you are looking to grow, if you love to grow, if you've got a parent who's a curious, engaged learner, Masterclass is the perfect gift. One that just won't last a year, it'll last a lifetime. That's the gift of learning with Masterclass. With Masterclass, you can learn from the best to become your best. It's the only streaming platform where you can learn and grow with over 200 of the world's best. For just $10 a month billed annually, a membership with Masterclass gets you unlimited access to every single instructor. You can access it on your phone, your computer, your smart TV, or even in audio mode. Our Flusterclux listeners always get great discounts on Masterclass of at least 15% off any annual membership at masterclass.com/fluster. See Masterclass's latest deal, at least 15% off at masterclass.com/fluster. masterclass.com/fluster. Okay, you know when you run into a friend or an acquaintance and they say, "How are you?" And you say, "Oh, good." Well, those words just sort of come out of our mouth, but what if you really meant it? What if when somebody said to you, "How are you doing?" and you said, "I'm good," you could really mean it? This is what Headspace helps with. It's an app that helps 100 million people with their mental health and well-being with guided meditations, mindfulness practices, and so much more. It helps reduce stress, boost mood, and it improves sleep. Headspace combines scientifically proven benefits of meditation and mindfulness with modern practices. Look, the science is in. We know that even small amounts of meditation can improve your sense of well-being, improve your sleep. It also helps when you're short on time. There are on-the-go programs that help you get in the right headspace in just a few minutes. There are over 1,000 hours of mindfulness exercise. Feel good and mean it when you say it. For a limited time, get Headspace free for 60 days. Go to headspace.com/fluster. That's HEADSPACE.com/fluster to unlock all of Headspace free for 60 days. Headspace.com/fluster. Okay, we're back.
So, Lynn, one of the things that we talk about a lot is what might a parent's own anxiety be in terms of its relation to how their children behave or some of their child's anxieties. The mom in this reader question says, quote, "I have debilitating anxiety."
Yeah, I noticed that too. So there's two things there. One is that, first of all, when mom says, "I have debilitating anxiety," mom's question about this and sort of her daughter needing to say this and having it be repeated, I think the mom has a very valid question. And even if the mom didn't have a debilitating anxiety, I think she is right to sort of be thinking about this and questioning this. So I don't think that she's going overboard, or I don't think that she's pathologizing it or freaking out about something that doesn't need to. I think it is something to be investigated for sure. The reason that it's a yellow flag and not a red flag is because she's saying this sweet phrase. Like if she was going to bed at night and every night she had to say, "I hope I fall asleep and don't kill you while I'm sleeping," then you'd be like, "Oh my God." But she's saying this like sweet phrase of "I love you." It seems to me that she's seeking she needs to have kind of some sort of closure, some sort of reassurance. So it is not unusual at all for kids who have OCD to want their parents to repeat something that makes them feel good. It's the reassurance. So the only thing I would say about the debilitating anxiety, and mom says she's already really paying attention to it, is that when she talks about this with her daughter, and I think she can, that you want to go at it in a pretty casual, like, "Hey, what's going on?" sort of way, rather than in a sort of, "I'm so anxious about this and we have to figure this out." And also, it is not unusual for a child that has OCD to have a parent who has OCD. So there's a big, strong genetic component to OCD. I'm wondering if there's somebody else in the family who might have these tendencies. And the other thing too is it may be worth just sort of stepping back, pulling back a little bit and seeing if there are other OCD-ish behaviors that are showing up other than this one. She said that she isn't seeing other ritualistic behaviors, but there may be a confessing thing sometimes flies under the radar. Like she comes home and she has to tell mom what she's done. Sometimes there's an over responsibility component. I think I might have done this, or do you think I hurt this person's feelings, or do you think I did this thing wrong? So that might be showing up. And then just sort of the similar OCD things that we see a lot in terms of things needing to be just right. Because what the mom says about this is that if she gets interrupted or something doesn't feel just right, she has to say it again. Are there other areas in this child's life in which things need to be just right? So the shoes need to be just right, or other people have to do things in a certain way so that they feel just right. And oftentimes with OCD, we have this notion that comes from all sorts of places, is that it's about symmetry, or it's about perfection, or it's about germs. Oftentimes, this just right thing, it shows up in clothing. It shows up in maybe the way food is put on the plate. It shows up sometimes, like in this, it shows up in the way that people say things or the order that people do things. So it can be a little more subtle. And I would pay attention to that and think, are there other places where it feels like my girl has to have things just right? And when we see that, that's another sort of warning sign. And again, it's a little tricky because the ASD potential diagnosis can look like this also. A lot of kids who are on the spectrum have rituals. They have things that they like to do over and over again. They have certain clothes that they like to wear. And that's not OCD because it's not causing them distress. What's causing them distress is that other people won't cooperate with the way they want it to be done. It's not an internally driven thing that they're having a bad thought or that they're trying to, in that superstitious way that OCD has, they're trying to stop something or prevent something. They just like it to be a certain way. So sometimes it's tricky to ferret out.
Want to circle back to something we were speaking of a few minutes ago. What do you think mom and or dad's role might have in any of this? Because it's interesting, her manner of content is a very loving thing. So it's almost putting some of it in bubble wrap where it's hard to really attack it because it's such a sweet thing, as you stated. But what do we as parents sometimes do inadvertently that facilitate these anxieties?
Well, I think you bring up a good point. So thank you for reminding me of that. Because it's such a sweet thing, one of the things we see with parents is that they're willing to engage in these routines, in these compulsions, these anxious behaviors, if they're in the category of it's a sweet thing. So say, for example, I can think of one where a child, not uncommon, but a child that I treated, where there was a really specific bedtime routine of how many hugs and kisses there was to be before bed. It got more and more exact. So you had to do 2 kisses on the right cheek, 2 kisses on the left cheek. They had to say, I love you, I love you, I love you. Then 2 more kisses, 2 more kisses. And the routine kept getting longer and longer. Now, when I asked the family, how long has this been going on? They'd been like, oh, this has been going on since she was 5 and now she was 10. The reason that they were coming in was because it was showing up in other places and she was demanding things of the family that weren't so cute as having a bedtime kissy and huggy routine. And the routine kept getting longer and longer. So they felt like they were being held hostage. So what happens oftentimes is if the content of the ritual is, and I'm making air quotes, if the content is cute, if the content is like, oh, that's so adorable that she does that thing, then it sort of flies under the radar for a while. And I think if mom in her anxiety, if she is afraid to call this out, for one, because it was so cute, but also she's afraid that it's going to upset her daughter, then that's one of the things that she has to pay attention to. So we don't want to let something go because we're afraid that it's going to make our children angry. And anxious parents tend to not want to step into that because they do worry that they're going to say the wrong thing. They're going to make their daughter upset. They're going to cause some sort of emotional scarring. So I think that's what the mom has to pay attention to. It's cute. It's fairly innocuous. She says it. They say it. The thing that's hard about this for the mom is that as long as everybody cooperates, it's not a big deal. But I could give you 82 examples of situations where families will say, as long as we all cooperate, it's not a big deal. And then it's a big deal. And I've said this before too, is that parents go along with these things because they're cute or because it's not a big deal or we might as well. Talk to the siblings and they're like, oh my God, right? We have to do this thing or my parents have to do this thing. The siblings oftentimes notice how much the parents are being held hostage by this. And sometimes if it's a cute thing too, then you'll get advice from grandparents or whatever. The mom might say the mom said to her mom or to her mother-in-law, oh gosh, Amelia has this thing we have to say at night. And, the grandmother might say, oh, that's so cute. Oh, enjoy it because she's going to grow out of it someday. And you're going to miss when she said that. I can tell you that if we're talking about OCD ritualistic behavior, she might grow out of this only to have it be replaced by something that's not as cute. Yeah, it's worth having the conversation. It is. If this little girl is like, no, what are you talking about? Blah, blah, blah. What the mom can say is, oh, you know what? It seems to me that we have to follow the rules of bedtime a lot. And I think we're going to break the rules a little bit. And that's what I was saying before. Like the mom can say, I'm going to say what I want to say. So when the little girl says, I love you, you're the best dad ever, then the dad can say, I love you too. I love you to the moon and back. Or I love you as much as the biggest ice cream cone in the whole world or something like that. And if you play around with that, that might be an indicator too. If she can tolerate that, I would be less concerned. If she throws a nutty about that, then we're really looking at that problem of rigidity that you want to pay attention to. So I've been hearing a lot about women's health and metabolism and how we can maximize our fitness and our diet and exercise and all of this stuff. And it can get pretty complicated. It can get a little overwhelming. Lumen is the way to figure out how to monitor your metabolism. It's the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It's a device that measures your metabolism through your breath. On the app, it lets you know if you're burning fat or carbs. It gives you tailored guidance to improve your nutrition, your workouts, your sleep, even stress management. How does it work? Well, all you have to do is breathe into your lumen first thing in the morning, and you'll know what's going on with your metabolism, whether you're burning mostly fats or carbs. It gives you a personalized nutrition plan for that day based on your measurements. It just makes it easy. Your metabolism is your body's engine. It's how your body turns the food you eat into fuel that keeps you going. And isn't it great to have a device that helps you figure this out, that makes it simple? It gives you recommendations to improve your metabolic health. It can also track your cycle, as well as the onset of menopause, and adjust your recommendations to keep your metabolism healthy through hormonal shifts so you can keep up your energy and stave off those cravings. Spring back into your health and fitness. Go to lumen.me/fluster to get 15% off your Lumen. That's LUMEN.me/fluster for 15% off your purchase. Thank you, Lumen, for sponsoring this episode. It's finally spring. The sun is shining. You know how it is. You go through your wardrobe and you think, okay, so I need to freshen things up. Well, Quince has got you covered. I don't know if you wear t-shirts like I do, but they have a cotton modal scoop T-neck 3-pack for $36. 3 high-quality t-shirts. I already have several of their t-shirts. I love them. Everything with Quince is priced 50 to 80% less than what you'd find at similar brands. They work directly with top artisans, cutting out the middlemen. Quince gives you luxury without the markup. And Quince only works with factories that use safe, ethical, premium fabrics and finishes. If you are looking to Add some amazing essentials to your summer wardrobe. Treat your closet to a little summer glow up with Quince. Go to quince.com/fluster for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/fluster to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/fluster. Okay, spring is in the air. I love spring. I love my kitty. I don't love litter box stink. Nobody does. That's why we use Pretty Litter. It obliterates odors so we can enjoy all the wonderful scents of spring without the smell of a litter box. Pretty Litter's non-clumping formula traps odor and moisture. It's lightweight, low dust, 1 6-pound bag works for up to a month. And Pretty Litter gives me peace of mind. It changes color to indicate early signs of potential illness in my kitty, like urinary tract infections, kidney issues, and more. And since Pretty Litter ships free right to my door, I never run out. You don't want to run out of kitty litter. I don't have huge kitty litter bags taking up space. I don't have to go out to my car and get those huge tubs of cat litter and lug them into the house. I have used many types of kitty litter. I have had cats my whole life. Pretty Litter is better. It doesn't clump. It's cleaner. It's not dusty. And you can tell the difference between a litter that deals with odor and a litter that doesn't. Pretty Litter helps keep my house smelling fresh and clean. Try and you'll love it. Go to prettylitter.com/flusterclux to save 20% on your first order and get a free cat toy. That's prettylitter.com/flusterclux to save 20% on your first order and get a free cat toy. prettylitter.com/flusterclux. Terms and conditions apply. See site for details. Okay, so now back to the show.
So, Lynn, one of the things we've talked about is the time of day and the setting in which some of these conversations are best had. And I would assume that in this instance, the best time to not have such a conversation would be in the moments
Yes.
preceding or following this little cute saying at night.
Yes, very good point. Yeah, especially because it's at night. You don't want to have these conversations in the middle of it. And this is similar to the situation where people, a lot of times educators will say to me, what do we do with a kid who's freaking out? Can we teach them about this? And the answer is no, not in the middle of it. Absolutely. You don't want to have this conversation before bed. As far away from the time of day that you can get, it would be good. So it would be much better to have this conversation in the morning. And when you wake up in the morning and maybe it's on a Saturday morning, you don't really have to be anywhere or do anything. And you say, you know what? Last night, remember you said this and I said this, and we've been doing that for a long time. So I'm just curious, like we were saying before, I'm just curious, what would happen? It seems that I have to say it the way you want me to say it, or it seems that this is an important ritual that you have. What would happen if we didn't say it? Do you worry that something will happen if we don't say it? Or what's that about? And just ask those open-ended questions. But absolutely, you want to do it in the morning, not at bedtime and not after she says it. Yeah, you want to do it at sunrise, not sunset. Yeah.
And conversely, for a child who has a hard time getting out to school, best not to have those conversations at breakfast.
Right. Yeah. And that for those conversations, you might want to have it after school. It's really tough to have any of these conversations at bedtime. And I've talked about this before when we've been talking about sleep issues. Sleep issues show up, and the reason they're so exhausting and the reason that they can feel so intractable is because everybody's out of gas. So you're out of mommy or daddy gas, your child is tired, and emotions are heightened, resilience is at its lowest. And so whenever you're having these kind of conversations, you want to do it at a time where everybody is pretty rested and has had a snack. Also, do it outside the house oftentimes. That's a good place to do it, like when you're on a walk or when you're driving in the car, so that you've changed the environment a little bit. But timing is really important in this for sure. And there's one more point I want to make, which I think I alluded to quickly before, but I just want to reiterate. Toddlers really love to do things over and over again. If you're listening to this and you've got a 1-year-old, a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old, particularly those 2 and 3-year-olds, they love books to be read over and over and over again. They love repetition. The rituals of learning language, all of that stuff is a really key part of toddler development. And it does not mean that your child has OCD. It doesn't mean that they're autistic. It doesn't mean that they have cognitive rigidity. I mean, think for all of you who've had toddlers. Oh my gosh, how many times did you read Goodnight Moon? Those Richard Scarry books, remember the trucks and over and over. And we've all had the experience of trying to skip a page and they're like,
yeah.
no, 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 no. And they know exactly. And you want to go to the library and get some new books and they want to read those same damn 3 books over and over and over again. That is absolutely developmentally appropriate. As they get older and you see them being rigid about other things, or if you begin to notice that there's a lot of distress when you don't do it the same way as they get older, that's what we want to pay attention to. And that's when we throw in the flexibility stuff. But that little toddler thing of wanting to play the same game, wanting to sing the same song, wanting to read the same book, totally, totally normal.
Robin told the story of how our son, when he was very little, he would get into bed and then he would have to scoot below the covers to say goodnight to his nephews.
Oh, yeah. It's so funny. I know. And my son had this little blanket that he called Eep because he couldn't say sleep. And the little blanket had to be wrapped around his feet. So instead of being up near him, you had to wrap a little Eep around his feet. I had these 2 blankets that I call my kitties. Do you remember that? You probably don't remember that. But I had 2 blankets called my kitties, and they had to be on top of me in a certain order. I can't remember, but like the pink one on the bottom and the blue one on the top. And all of those things are just really normal and appropriate. I also had a blanket that I brought to college, and that's probably not so normal nor appropriate. But you remember Orange Blankie? My son had Orange Blankie. That was my blanket in college. Do with that information what you will, but I really loved my Orange Blanket. Yeah.
How long did your son wear his Superman costume?
Oh, well, just for the record, 19 months, day and night. But there were 3 rotating costumes. It was Superman, Batman, and Spider-Man. And he had the pajamas on the bottom and then the Superman underwear over the top. And then he had the pajamas on the top every single day and night for 19 months. It was so normal that we didn't even notice. And he went to this really cute little preschool. And at first we said, because his older brother went there first, and we said to the teacher, Mary, Montessori Mary, who was just such an angel in my life, he really likes to wear this costume. And so he was 3. He was still wearing it when he was 3. And she's like, oh, he'll wear it the first few days and kids will be like, why is he wearing a costume? She said, then they won't even pay attention. And that was exactly what happened. So every picture we have of him during that period of time, he's in a Superman costume. We took him on a plane once and somebody was like, oh, that's so cute. He's wearing his costume on the plane. And I was like, costume? Oh, yeah. He's wearing a costume. It was just the way he dressed. Yeah.
Yes. Well, our son always took off his pants whenever we went anywhere. He'd walk into a restaurant and he would take off his pants. And our Christmas card that year is him standing next to his beaming sister with no pants on.
What did it say, like Merry Christmas and Pants on Earth or something like that? Yeah, so cute. And you think about, like, how do they come up with his idea? Like, what was going on in his head that he was like, you know what, I'm not wearing pants.
Just comfort.
Just comfort, pure comfort, yeah. So all those cute little things that kids do, we don't need to pathologize them. We don't need to think there's something wrong. They just do cute things. And that's why I think this question is hard for this mom, because it is a cute thing. But at 9, then we're beginning to see that there might be something else going on. But a problem to solve, not an emergency, a problem to solve. Thanks for listening. And if you found this podcast helpful, please give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. It helps other people find this information.
And if you'd like to dig deeper on any of these topics, we have specialized playlists on our Spotify profile, and the link is in the show notes. Topics like teens, depression, and OCD. Bye, Lynn.
Bye, Robin.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/kidsandfamily. Just go to Indeed.com/kidsandfamily right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.